Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well. This video is going to serve as kind of a part two to my last video, but the reason why I didn't include this is because it's basically a whole different topic. It's related, but not similar. It's similar, right? But I really want to talk about the fact that seemingly people simply cannot talk anymore. And I've talked about this on stream with my viewers, and there are people who watch me who don't believe in the things I do, who don't agree with everything I say. And guess what? That's fine. I love that. That's awesome. It really is, you know? America as a country was founded off of the idea that men, women, children alike, they can all agree to disagree. That's what makes this country great. It's the freedom of speech and belief. You can practice whatever belief you want as long as it's not harming someone. And yeah, it's such a simple idea. And I've found more and more as I've gotten a little older. I'm still pretty young, younger than most of you probably think. But as I've gotten older, my peers they seem to be just not talking to people, and they're kind of isolating themselves to these little cubicles or these little online areas where it's just a bunch of yes men. And a lot of my peers have become more and more left and more right. It's there's no longer this in between area, right? And that's actually pretty scary. It really is because that shows that no one is talking to the other side. No one is willing to listen and not necessarily debate, but just have a regular conversation about serious topics. Topics like politics, topics like religion, topics like abortion or immigration, anything like that. And that's pretty scary, you know. And I made a few videos a couple months ago before you guys blew up my channel. You can watch them in my shower thoughts slash hot takes playlist. But I made a few videos talking about why um, Charlie Kirk's assassination is such a big deal, and it is because although I didn't agree with everything he said, he was one of the very few people who was openly allowing anyone from any background of any belief to talk to him, right? It's not even necessarily debate, it's just talking. Now, most of the time it did turn into debates, but overall, it was a good thing. It really was, you know? They say to change hearts and minds and to grow as human beings, we simply talk. And talking is the number one thing that separates us from animals. It separates us from monkeys, from zebras, from giraffes, from whales even. Talking is the one thing that makes humans human, fundamentally speaking. And if you are still watching this video up until this point, if you didn't get angry at something I said or just went down in the comments, left a stupid hate comment, whatever, if you're still watching, I highly recommend you guys to read this book by C.S. Lewis. You can read it, audiobook, whatever. It's a book called The Problem of Pain. And this book is literally just C.S. Lewis doing a back and forth with himself on human pain, animal pain, and the existence of a hell. And he's pretty much just going back and forth with himself, trying to show the reader that despite all of the bad things in life, there can still be a creator, a god, a entity outside of our own understanding. And it's such an amazing book. But you see stuff like this, and it sucks that you have to read a book to even think about this stuff. You know what I mean? It's so sad. It really is. And again, like I see my peers. I've had friends in real life completely cut me off and just never talk to me ever again. All because I may disagree with them on one particular subject, or not even disagree, but more like a fence sit position, right? Because I'm not well informed on everything. Obviously, I'm only one man, but so much so in the last video, if you're watching this one after watching the last one, I actually plan on leaving a comment because I uploaded the video and I realized I made a mistake, and I corrected myself. I also updated some information that I put in that comment, right? Because I try to be fair. I do. I like to give everyone a chance. It doesn't matter who you are, you know where you're from. If you're a living human being, you deserve to be listened to equally across the spectrum. It doesn't matter, right? And that's really just it. Really, at the end of the day, and it's just so sad, man. It really is. I mean, it's gotten so bad to the point where even family members, if you try to talk to them about something deep, intellectual, and important, stuff that actually matters in society, outside of surface level topics like the weather, movies, and video games, when you talk to certain people in your family who may not agree with everything you say, their first instinct in their first action is to almost always just cut you off. It's genuinely pitiful. It's sad. It really is. And when I was in high school, I talked about this on stream. When I was in high school, I took AP English and literature classes, right? I was a geek. I still am, but that's besides the point. The point is, in these classes, we were taught how to properly debate. We were taught how to have civilized conversations. And we had debates, I believe, once or twice a week. And the subjects on which we would debate would be anything from, politics to movies, books to religion, and it was so amazing to me because at the beginning of the year, we were all super nervous to talk about this stuff. We were all super conditioned to be in our own little bubble and to never, exercise free speech and to never actually challenge our own beliefs. And back then, I didn't believe in anything. I was kind of a agnostic. I believed there was some higher power, and that atheism was just really stupid to me. And but back then, I was also a very hateful person. Like I genuinely hated everyone and everything, including myself. But that's not the point. The point is, we would have these debates, and even though there was a instructor most of the time, someone who would help keep the peace, 99% of the time the instructor wouldn't have to say anything, right? Because as we became more and more comfortable talking about these deep pressing issues in society and history itself, we became more comfortable around one another. We became, basically friends. I was friends with people who I didn't agree with at all on anything. We listened to different music, we watched different movies, we played different video games, we believed different things politically, and yet we were still really good friends because at the end of the day, we could shake each other's hand, give each other a smile, and say, agree to disagree, and then we would go home and hang out. Like this. I genuinely think the best way to get rid of this problem is to teach kids in school, like middle school and high school, how to hold a normal conversation. And I know that sounds crazy, right? It really does. It sounds crazy. But as I'm looking back at my past, I've begun to realize if I didn't have this class, I probably wouldn't be talking to people either. I probably wouldn't be good at this whole YouTube thing because I would have no personality. I wouldn't have the guts to actually put my own opinions and my own beliefs out there for people to see, right? And I honestly think that a lot of this may be a boomer take, but I think this has to do with two things, and that's the fact that social media has been tailored to make people angry. The more angry you are, the more you're going to use it, right? And a part of that has to do a lot with your own personal beliefs. So algorithms, they feed you content that they know will trigger you, make you angry, and you dislike it, leave an angry comment, and swipe, and you rinse and repeat, really. And that's bad. It really is. You have to go out into the real world to truly understand that the world is not like the internet. It's not even close. And people in reality have a lot more common sense and common courtesy than the internet would like you to think. And that's the reality. People are far, far more complex than who they vote for or their religious beliefs. That being said, there are certain cultures that are just better than others. That's just the truth. But that's not the point. The point is people just can't talk. And the second biggest reason why I think this is a problem is the lack of third spaces, you know? Because everyone's online in their own little corner in their room on their phone 24/7, phone, computer, whatever. They're not going to places like libraries. People aren't reading books. You know, people aren't going to gyms as much as they used to be. And if they do go to the gym, they're scared to talk to other people. They're scared to, make friends, which is crazy because this is an ability that we learned and mastered as literal children, kindergartners, preschoolers, and yet we seem to have lost this ability, you know? People just at the end of the day, it's this tension. People aren't good at making icebreakers, and even when they do, a lot of people view a disagreement as some kind of personal attack. But yeah, man, let me know what you guys think down below. Uh, this is another one of those kind of open discussion videos that I'm experimenting with. This is something I talk about a lot on live streams and stuff like that. Feel free to check it out if you want. I have a whole past live stream playlist. But yeah, if you guys like the video, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. It's something I've had on my mind for quite a bit now. And I'm really just looking forward to see what you guys have to say. And, like I said, you don't have to agree with everything I say. I even I've had a few newcomers come into my live stream, and I've told them, like, if you want to talk politics, if you want to talk religion, you want to talk books, movies, whatever, anything goes as long as you're doing it in good faith, right? If you're not insulting people or throwing tantrums in my chat, and anything goes. At the end of the day, the best way to end a conversation, if you can feel tension and stuff, is to just say, "Hey, man, I agree to disagree. I hope you have a blessed day. God bless you. Have a great day." You know what I mean? And maybe that's another problem. People just don't know how to end a conversation because when one does start, it just goes, and it's like a boulder, rolling, 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 and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as it comes towards you. And yeah, at the end of the day, I hope you guys just find some reassurance in knowing that you're not the only one who sees this as an issue. You're not the only one who finds it difficult to talk about things that genuinely matter, things that actually affect everyone's life on a day-to-day basis, not just surface level things like the weather. And yeah, if you agree with me, that's great. If you disagree, that's fine too. I hope you all take care regardless. And yeah, peace.